14% of the US population are immigrants, but when we look at the patents issued, 23% are coming from our immigrant community. And if you look at the US Nobel Prizes, 38% are coming from our immigrant community. How do we explain this? When we look at the history of science, what are some moments where the direction really changed?
One would be Christopher Columbus and the European encounter with the New World, the industrialization of the globe. These are big events and they require a big response. That big response changes science.
So in these moments of big global change, how does the government really impact science?
The government and government funding is the lifeblood of science. Christopher Columbus would never have made it to America if he hadn't had the support of the Spanish absolutist monarchy. Darwin wouldn't have been able to go around the world and look at all the different plants if he hadn't been on board the HMS Beagle, which is a British Navy ship. And so therefore he got support from the British government.
You and I have both been reading this book, Abundance. They break up the scientific process in terms of discovery and then implementation, like how to make science useful. Do you see a distinction in how federal dollars are more impactful in one stage versus the other?
It is very difficult to make a strong distinction between science and technology. For example, work on the scientific concept of energy depended a lot upon the development of the steam engine. The science followed the technology. It's difficult to divide the process up into two parts, beginning with the idea and then talking about the implementation. In fact, the two things are often blurred.
There's sometimes a tension in higher education about whether our institution is just supporting pure basic exploration or whether our institution is very outcome driven, practical driven. One of the things that Klein and Thompson bring up is just the importance of pure accidental following your ideas where they might go. How would you weigh in on this?
Funding science is complicated exactly because we want our scientists to be creative. It's difficult to build in the risk of scientific innovation into most funding models.
You present a really compelling problem. Do you have any solutions?
One of the problems with scientific research is what has been called the Matthew effect. The Matthew effect is when a scientist establishes a reputation for themselves, either because they work at a very important institution or because one of their papers has attracted a lot of attention. That tends to attract more funding. And what that means is that funding tends to become conservative. In order to correct for that, you have to build in some kind of mechanism in the funding process that is going to specifically look for innovation. For example, funding to scientists under the age of 30, fund more women scientists, fund scientists from different parts of the world with different perspectives. Those kinds of policies, I think, might open up the funding process a little bit and make it more innovative.
Klein and Thompson, they give this remarkable statistic. They point out that 14% of the US population are immigrants, but when we look at the patents issued, 23% are coming from our immigrant community. And then if you look at the US Nobel Prizes, 38% are coming from our immigrant community. How do we explain this?
People that leave their homes really leave their homes and go somewhere else in order to succeed. They tend to be people that have grit, that are bold, that want to succeed, that have drive. And I think, therefore, they enrich the cultures that they come into. And I think that's what we're seeing in that statistic.
Dr. Lambert, thank you so much for helping us make sense of the role of federal funding and scientific research. If people want to hear more, what courses do you teach?
I would recommend Liberal Studies 331. Which is the history of science from the early modern period to the present. Liberal Studies 337, which is science, culture, and society. And I'm also developing a course on the history of data and the history of the computer.
Wonderful.